Welcome home. We are WNST, AM 1570, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. Check us out on the internet if you are so inclined and you're in the car in the Baltimore area. Set a spot on your dial for us at AM 1570. We do come in crystal clear. I did listen on the way down to the airport. We get a little scratchy in Glen Burnie, but we come right back in Severna Park, as well as going west out toward Frederick as well, over the river and through the woods during this strange holiday week. Football on Saturday, football on Wednesday. Santa comes down the chimney next Tuesday night. Luke Jones will be here to chronicle all of it. All of it brought to you by our friends at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care, who power up our Maryland Crab Cake Tour. On Tuesday, we'll be at Amici's in the afternoon. They do not have a crab cake. That's not stopping me. Never stopped me before. Wednesday will be at Costas. They do have a crab cake as well as some crab imperial. We'll be there all afternoon. Such a huge list of people are going to be joining me. Marty Conway, Sam Sessa, John Maroon, Seth Elkin during Pittsburgh week from the Maryland Lottery. That'll be good. Alan McCallum, Chris Corman, the sports editor of the Baltimore Banner, where Luke and I eventually are going to have to go work. We'll be there. And then on Wednesday, Gina Schock is going to join us. Todd Schuler is going to join us. Pete Ramundi, one of our great sponsors from up in Harford County, going to join us, as well as Calvin Statham, my 7th, 8th, and 9th grade music teacher at Holabird, as well as Pikesville Middle School as well. Luke used to teach young people. They're now older people because he's been doing this for 15 years. What are you going to teach me this week about schedule making? Because I think of all the jobs I could get in life, I think I've lived my destiny to be the Baltimore sports guy that's been banned, that couldn't even go to the press box on Sunday. And I admire the fact that you said, I'm not going up there on Sunday. I got church. I'm like, good for you. But this schedule maker job, as I remembered it back in the sporting news era, I remember my buddy Paul Atner, who was a coworker of mine, went to New York and did this big sporting news piece. It was a centerpiece, which is the biggest thing you do in sporting news back in the day, on how the schedule is made. And back in the day, no computers, none of that. They had it was like a war room that they did it on blackboards. Now they come up with this. And this week, to match Houston, Kansas City, Pittsburgh, and the Ravens, thinking none of them would have anything catastrophic that would keep them from being playoff teams. I don't think anybody thought Pittsburgh was a playoff team. And they scheduled this thing on Saturday and Wednesday. Kudos to the schedule makers here to keep this interesting, because I'm not one of these guys thinking they should ever play Saturday football or Wednesday football. And I know how you feel about Thursday football, but at least they hit the target right this year for scheduling. Nobody can bitch. The Pittsburgh had the easier schedule. We had the easier. No, everybody got to play on Saturday night for the season, and then they got to go play on Christmas Day for the season. So, Luke, a big week ahead around here, and the Orioles don't need to do anything, and they haven't. They don't need to do anything because we're watching football, right?
Yeah, I mean, a huge week. One of the biggest weeks that they've had, talking about the regular season in quite some time. So, look, I mean, late season Saturday games, that's been part of the norm of the
Oh, that's
NFL in
going on for
recent.
40 years.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
So that's there's nothing new there, and the fact that they put a Ravens Steelers game there is not exactly shocking. In fact, it was funny watching some of the Fox promos talking about Ravens Steelers Saturday. I mean, a Ravens Steelers game being played on Fox. So, I
Never
mean,
happened before, right?
they're excited about that, and not only do they get one, they get the most meaningful one we've seen in several years. So obviously they're happy about it. Look, you mentioned the schedule making process. I mean, it's really this simple. Make it work. Make it work, right? I mean, when it comes down to the NFL, for years avoided playing on Christmas other than when it was absolutely kind of necessary to do it.
Well, they
When
gave it
Chris,
over to the NBA,
yeah, exactly.
and the
But
NBA just took it.
right, and the
And now
NBA,
nobody watches the NBA.
well,
Barely.
I mean, people watch it, but not like the NFL. No one watches anything like the NFL. We know that, and the league has said, well, we're gonna have games on a Wednesday afternoon on Christmas, even though, usually Christmas meant, you know, if it's on Sunday, you'd play most of your games on Saturday on Christmas Eve, and then you'd have one or two games on Christmas Day. If it's on a Monday, then it's like last year. You have a couple games on, but now they're going out of their way to do it, and they made this little scheduling pod, to your point, and it worked out nicely for them because you have four teams that are relatively healthy. We'll see about Patrick Mahomes and the high ankle sprain for him, but certainly doesn't look like, it doesn't look like he's out for the year, right? There's no indications that there's any concern about that. But part of that is also Kansas City's got a couple game cushion, right? I mean, I guess only one over Buffalo because Buffalo has the tiebreaker, but they've afforded themselves a little bit of a little wiggle room in the same way that the Steelers have a little bit of wiggle room, even after losing to Philadelphia on Sunday. But this stretch is going to challenge these four teams. I think one thing we talked about with the Ravens, with the late bye, with the how healthy they are, they should be well equipped to navigate this. Now, that doesn't mean that they're guaranteed to win both these games, but go look at these other teams and when they had their buys, especially Kansas City and Pittsburgh. I guess Houston, is kind of in a similar boat, but I think if you're the Ravens, it sets up perfectly, right? I mean, as well as it can, going on the road 4 days after you play the Steelers. I mean, that's going to be a challenge. There's no doubt, but there's
Well, look, the
nothing.
Steelers played to their knees in Philadelphia late. The Ravens sat half the team in the fourth quarter on Sunday,
Yeah,
too. There's a little bit of that the Ravens got out of this thing less nicked. And we're going to be talking about TJ Watt all week. And it's not even all week, it's a game Saturday in regard to are they going to be full strength going into this? They already had Pickens, right?
right. I mean, and to me, Pickens is as big as TJ Watt, not because he's as good as TJ Watt, but because of how important he is to that Pittsburgh offense that, let's face it, is short on playmakers, and they need as much explosiveness as they can get. So
I don't
we'll
know. Watch
see.
out for Fryermuth across the middle in this defense this
Well,
week.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying they're devoid of it, but clearly Pickens is a big playmaker, even if he's a knucklehead, right? I mean, he's certainly.
There's a long tradition of knuckleheads at wide receivers since Stallworth and Swan in Pittsburgh. They were
Well,
the last two sane guys, I think,
the
there.
the Ravens have one of them now in Deontay Johnson, so who apparently is coming back from suspension. I mean, it sounds like he's going to be there. We'll see if he plays, but yeah, I mean, you look at this. Look, Ravens Steelers is always a grind. It's always a war. Use all your cliches and all your priors as far as the history of this rivalry, and it's on a short week, so there's a little bit of a challenge there. More so for Pittsburgh, it looks like, from an injury standpoint. So if you're the Ravens, you're saying, hey, there's no excuse, right? This team's as healthy as it could possibly imagine being at this point in time. Go look at the Ravens list of IR players. The most notable on that list, Arthur Millette, who is maybe at best their sixth or seventh best defensive back when healthy, and Charlie Kohler, their number 3 tight end, who had a role, but certainly not a critical role in this offense. So, I mean, you can't ask for more than that. I mean, even if Watt plays, even if Pickens plays, they're still in good shape and better shape than Pittsburgh on that front. So there's no excuse. You're playing at home, right? You got to go take care of business.
They're a
You have
six
to.
and a half point favorite at home this week. They're a touchdown favorite.
Okay. I I hadn't seen that. If you had asked me, I would have said probably 5, but they're probably taking into account Pickens and Watt right now. The Ravens are way healthier right now. So, but
And at
as
home.
as you mentioned in one of our previous segments, in the aftermath of this Giants game that felt more like a scrimmage. So we haven't talked a whole lot about the game because they beat a lousy team. What do you want me to say? I mean, good. I'm glad they better have won, and they did. But when you look at this on paper, I mean, from the quarterback on down, and I say that not trying to diss Russell Wilson, but he's not Lamar Jackson at this point in his career. He's not anywhere close to that. Russell Wilson has his limitations. He's played well relative to expectations, but Russell Wilson hasn't been that MVP candidate, that MVP caliber quarterback in several years now. So
All they got to do is move the sticks every 3 plays, 10
sure,
yards, right?
no,
And
and
that
I'm not
really is and that's their goal. That's the way Pittsburgh's going to play it this week.
right, but that just speaks to you have a small margin for error. I mean, think about it, and let's talk about that game a little bit. They coughed up the football at a terrible time. That was the turning point for them. They an unforced error. They it on a pitch. And they were done, right? I mean, that cost them any shot they had because that's the style they play. When you're a team that, especially when you don't have Pickens on the field and you're not going to get the explosive plays as frequently, you've got to play. You can't be behind the sticks. You've got to play ahead of schedule. You've got to get positive yardage. Any play where you lose yardage is killer. We talked about the Ravens with the penalties, right? I mean, as much as it's hurt the Ravens, they're so good offensively that they have been able to overcome it a lot of times. You don't want to do it, but when you have to, it's nice that you can do it.
But these games
Pittsburgh,
become field position games. They become punt games. They
sure,
become 1916. They become, are you going to make your kicks?
no
Big
doubt.
time. Are you going to make your kicks? We haven't mentioned Tucker because he made his extra point this week. It was the rage here 2 weeks ago. They didn't play football last week. We still don't know where we are. And Tucker's going to have to make some kicks on Saturday afternoon. I mean, I don't think there's any. This isn't a walkover game. This is a touchdown game, one possession game. And it's a game where you're going to stall at the 31-yard line. And it's going to be 4th and 5 because the Steelers have a defense. And you're going to have to say, are we going to kick a 48, 49-yard field goal? And are we going to make it or not?
Or are we going to go for it? Right? I mean, they're maybe not 4th and 5 in that spot, but if it's 4th and 2, you might say you're going for it. And look, that can be a good thing or that can be a bad thing, right? I mean, go ask Dan Campbell. The fourth downs that work out, everyone loves them. The fourth downs that don't work out, you're an idiot, right? I mean, that's what we see. So that's why I've said with this Tucker dynamic, I'm fascinated to see how the Ravens have to tweak their approach. I mean, if it's a 52-yarder and it's 4th and 3, I'm much more inclined to go for it now than, previous years
Temperature at game time Saturday, partly cloudy, 32 degrees.
and we'll see about the wind. We know the wind is tricky in that stadium. It tends to swirl.
Would have been worse on Sunday. It's gonna be really cold here Sunday. It's gonna be in the 20s here Sunday.
So we'll see. I mean, look, you're not wrong. I'm not disagreeing with you, but my point is, if you don't have that trust in Justin Tucker, and how can you at this point in time, then if those situations that might have been 70-30, try the field goal, or 80-20, try the field goal, now it's the 50-50 situations where you say, oh, we're going to go for it. Or, probably not too many instances of this, but you might punt in a spot rather than try a 55-yard field goal. So it's where they are. And that's where, as much as we talk about breaking down this matchup and, okay, the Ravens are better offensively, Pittsburgh's better defensively, Pittsburgh has the better kicker. Boswell's been very good this year. The rest of the AFC North has had kicking woes all over the place, Cincinnati and Cleveland as well. But, Boswell's been fantastic. So in a game where, yeah, you do expect it to be close. I mean, look no further than the first meeting between these teams. Boswell made, 6 field goals. We forget that Pittsburgh didn't score a touchdown in that game. And they won because they had the better kicker, and the Ravens made mistakes and had a kicker who didn't make his kicks. So, it's a tiny margin for error in these games. And I think in a general sense, when you're talking about 2 short week games like this, you've got to be on your P's and Q's. Guys are going to be tired. Even with this bye week, it's not like everyone's going to be fresh. I mean, I don't think so much Saturday. I think where you're going to really see it, these two teams are going to feel it. All 4 teams are going to feel it much more on that Christmas game, because you're going to be talking about not just a short week, but then a really short week right after that. So everyone's in the same boat, but I think
Pittsburgh's
all these teams
playing breakfast at home on Christmas Day. Kansas City's got to get on a plane and fly there. Like,
is Mahomes healthy? Right?
Look,
yeah.
You're asking a lot of the fans on Christmas Day to say to little Johnny and my grandmother's over at the house, we're going to the Steelers. I mean, like, I don't. We've done that here on Thanksgiving and Christmas night and different things like that. It's a strange predicament. It really is. And it's not something we're going to talk a lot about because the game matters. We're going to talk about the game. But, man, this league, I pine away for the old Houston Oilers in my childhood of the Colts in the 70s when times were simpler, because the league does so many things that make me want to hold my nose.
I find it, and I still have not heard a good answer. I don't understand why the games on Christmas are 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock. Why? I mean, we're talking about, and I understand not, you know, it's not 100% of the population that celebrates Christmas. I understand that. But it's an overwhelming percentage celebrates in some shape or form. Why is there a game at 1 o'clock and 4:30 as opposed to 4:30 and 8:30? Like that's bizarre to me. Forget about us on the East Coast, and this is where East Coast bias. Where think about being on the West Coast. You have little ones. The Steelers and the Chiefs have fans all over the country. We know that. You're a Steelers fan in California. Your kids are opening their presents and your team's getting ready to kick off at 10 a.m. I mean, it's just bizarre to me that they're doing that. But look,
Well, sports wants to own the society, which is like great in that I've dedicated my entire life to local sports here, right? Like that they want to own every day on the calendar. This is
but like middle of the day though, that it's not for me.
you're
I'm
asking
not
Steelers fans to go to the ballpark at 9 o'clock in the morning on Christmas
right.
Day. It's
That's what I'm
insane.
saying. It's insane. Like I don't understand, but because last year, let's take last year. The Ravens were involved in Christmas Day football a year ago. They played the night game out in San Francisco, and Kansas City hosted the Raiders, and I believe that was a 4 o'clock game. I think it was,
Yeah, it
right?
was an evening game. Yeah.
Although, wait a second. As I'm thinking about it, I could be wrong on this, and this is shame on me. I don't have the schedule pulled up in front of me for Christmas, but I believe there actually may have been a 1 o'clock Christmas game. Um, I'm trying to pull it up right
Well,
now
either
as I'm talking.
way,
There
it's
was,
still
there
like
was, but there was a 1 o'clock, there was a 4:30, and there was an 8:15. So I guess my question would be, if you're only doing two and you're not doing a triple header like you did last year, again, why wouldn't it be 4:30 and 8 o'clock? Those are better viewing windows than 1 o'clock. That's why all the sexy national TV games that are on CBS and Fox aren't at 1 o'clock. They're at 4:25, right? I mean, the Ravens played the Eagles at 4:25 a few weeks ago. So that's just weird to me. Because I've asked some people, and I don't know if it's a Netflix thing and they're thinking they might get a better global audience with a game at 1 o'clock because, obviously the league is trying to tap into international markets more and more and more. So maybe from that standpoint, it makes a little more sense. But that was just weird to me. When they said that there were two Christmas games when the schedule came out back in, early May, mid-May, whatever it was, my assumption was, you have a late afternoon game and then a Christmas night game. So I don't know. That was just weird to me. But these four teams that are involved, everyone's in the same boat. Some are healthier than others. Some are in better position than others. I mean, Houston, they're they're sitting pretty. Kansas City sitting pretty. Uh, Pittsburgh has locked up a playoff spot, but it's not as though the Ravens are in danger of not making the playoffs. I mean, we
yeah,
know they're going to
nobody's
be.
chasing them at this point.
Yeah, I mean, they're not going. They're going to be a wild card at the very least, and they'd have to really, really stumble to not be the top wild card at this point. But
Well, this game gives us all the opportunity and the oxygen next week. They're either going to be looking like a division winner or they're going to lose on Saturday night. We're going to talk about the thing we've been talking about, which is how are they going to navigate the road
yeah,
to win a Super Bowl with this team and this defense and this kicker specifically right now. Um, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say their season is Saturday night, and they are a touchdown favorite at home. And this feels like if you're going to win a Super Bowl, you better win Saturday.
oh yeah, no question about it. As much as you and I have debated the merits of going on the road, it's important to have at least that first round at home, right? I mean, if you can get one home game, then you're looking at it and saying, okay, win in the divisional round, you get to the conference title game, and then it's a matter of winning back-to-back road games, right? Because the Super Bowl is a neutral site game anyway, so it's not as though you're counting that as a road game. But the idea of having to win three straight on the road, that's dicey. I mean, it really is. So that's where, yeah, I mean, the Ravens, you got to win, right? I mean, if you don't win Saturday, you'll hear the cliche, and Ravens fans and the team will talk themselves up and say, if you're facing Pittsburgh again in January, you're saying, well, it's really tough to beat a team three times, and I'll hear all that, but it's a matter of not winning one road game, but having to do that three times in a row. just to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, that's tough. So yeah, you'd love, and as much as we talk about the Ravens being road warriors in 2000 and road warriors in 2012, they were home in the first round, right? They had a home playoff game in the wild card round each time, and they won and got some momentum, and then they went on the road after that. So, they've got to try to do this. And like I said, I mean, you need to obviously win because it's over if not from a division standpoint. But you have to hope that Pittsburgh stubs its toe one more time after that. Because as I've looked at it, and you can, ESPN has like the playoff machine where you can click on the different outcomes and look at the scenarios and everything. I have not seen a path from you would get down to their record in common games, because head to head would be a wash if the Ravens win. Division record would be a wash
Well,
if
common
it.
games are still coming with Kansas City. They have to play, right? So to whatever those outcomes are.
Well, right, right. But what I'm saying there is, I mean, but if they win that game, then you're kind of looking at it and saying, well, is it going to add up? So, I mean, the Ravens,
Pittsburgh's got a hell of a week too, coming in here and then hosting Kansas City on Wednesday. Like, we're going to learn a lot between now and by the time whatever my dessert is on Christmas night after all this is over with, we're going to learn a lot.
well,
Next 10 days.
that's why I had said to you when we talked about this a week to 10 days ago, I said to you, look at Pittsburgh's record or their schedule. They could lose three in a row. I mean, it's not far-fetched whatsoever. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but they lost to Philly. They are coming into Baltimore as an underdog, as you pointed out, and the Ravens chomping at the bit for some revenge, overdue for some revenge at this point in time, having everything to play for if they want to have a home playoff game and win the division. And then they host Kansas City after that. I mean, that's a bear of a 3-week schedule. I mean, if Pittsburgh comes out of that and they're still in first place, then they've earned it, right? I mean, if they beat the Ravens on Saturday, they've obviously earned it because they've swept the Ravens, and all the talking heads like you and me that have said, "Oh, the Ravens, I think the Ravens are the better football team." It won't matter.
They're not.
Yeah. You can feel that way, but record-wise, it doesn't matter, right? It just doesn't because they're the division champion at that point, and then it's a matter of, hey,
You spin up a home game against your division rival when you're completely healthy at home during the holidays in December on national TV, touchdown favorite, just lost in Philadelphia. If you lose to Pittsburgh on Saturday night, you get what you get. You get what you
and
get.
and it doesn't mean the season's over, but it means you're a wild card and you're going to have to go on the road and the entire time. So, and you've made your bed, you got to sleep in it. I mean, it's that simple. So, we're going to see how this plays out. But these four teams, and I think Houston's interesting from a standpoint of we go back to the offseason and think about all the moves they made, including Stephon Diggs, and obviously Diggs tore his ACL, so he's not in the picture. But there was very much an expectation that Houston would be duking it out with the likes of Kansas City and the Ravens. If anything, if you remember, Nestor, and we've forgotten about this because Josh Allen has played at such a high level this year, there was very much a thought of Buffalo taking a step back this year, right? Not that they're going to be bad, but I think there was very much a perception, even if you ask Bills fans back in the spring.
The Diggs thing, and just sort of we're not going to be as good this year as we were last year,
right?
On paper.
I think there was a thought that, okay, they'll, because there were people who thought the Jets would win the division. There were people that thought Miami would win that division, and Buffalo would be, a wild card, but maybe like 10-7. Maybe that kind of an outfit, because it wasn't just Diggs, but they replaced a lot of guys on defense and all that. So for Buffalo to do what they've done, Kansas City, regardless of the eyeball test, is 13-1, which is crazy because it doesn't feel like they're that good, like that good. But hey, they're the Super Bowl champions, and the Ravens have, from a true talent level standpoint, look great, and they've also been the Ravens, which is why they're 9-5 as opposed to, I don't know, 12-2 or something like that. But Houston's a team that, they're 9-5. They have the same record as the Ravens, but they're another one of those teams where I look at them and say, they don't feel like they're that good. They feel very underwhelming to me. And look, they held the Dolphins to 12 points on Sunday. CJ Stroud has not been as good as a lot of people thought he would be in his second year after he had this amazing rookie season. CJ Stroud's been underwhelming. relative to expectations. Now, again, Diggs got hurt. Nico Collins missed quite a bit of time with a hamstring injury. Uh, Joe Mixon's actually worked out pretty well for them, in terms of what they got trading for him and what he's meant for the running game when, in previous years they couldn't run the ball at all. But that's a team that I don't think anyone really, when you talk about the true contenders in the AFC, no one really talks about Houston, but look at their opportunity over these next 2 weeks and what they can do. I mean, if they beat Kansas City and let's say for argument's sake that Patrick Mahomes doesn't play on Saturday, they go into Kansas City and they pull off. I don't even know if that'd be an upset without Mahomes. And then they host the Ravens on Christmas. They're a team that could really change the optics for themselves as a contender because, again, everyone talks about Kansas City, Buffalo, and the Ravens and the Steelers. I think that's who most teams, that I think the Chargers at times, but not so much Sunday, right?
I mean,
So,
you gave me some great ish 2 weeks ago. You're like, they're a good bad team, not a bad good team, and I'm like, yeah, the Chargers are a good bad team.
I mean, I just don't think they're. I think the Chargers are. Look, they're a playoff team. Do they have enough talent where you really think that they're going to be there
Well, the question would be
at
for
the end?
me and the pathway, because I do start to dream these things up at this point and say, all right, are they going to play a road game or a home game? We'll know that Saturday, based on that. I used to run road trips. You remember that? We used to put people on buses and take in the Pittsburgh and Buffalo to freeze on short notice for $1,000. So if anybody wants to go, I'll put a bus together because I was thinking about this. And this pathway that they're going to either earn or not earn based on this. And I think, well, if they're the 3 seed, if they're the 3 because they win out, and they'll be smelling really good, right? They win 3 games in a row here. They win on Christmas night. We're going to feel good about them if they're the 3 seed,
Sure.
right? And then you'd say, well, who are they going to play? Well, Pittsburgh would have gone into the tank probably at that point, right? And that may send them to Buffalo. That may send the styles make the fights. Who's coming in here to play a playoff game? Where are we going? Who's playing where? And can somebody get Buffalo out of the way? Right. So that's the way you start to play it if you're a 3 seed. I think if you lose this week or you spit your lunch up in Houston, which is not all that far fetched. I think
No.
the Ravens winning 2 games on Saturday and Wednesday, that they're gonna have to be, in John's biblical words, the best version of themselves. The next 2 games to win. I'm not a believer that they're just going to win these 2 games. I've seen enough with the kicker, with the penalties, with the defense. They're not great at home the way they used to be. Like, you come into our place, partly because my wife and I aren't there screaming for them. There's always 20,000 visiting fans now because it wasn't that way 15 years ago. It's not the home field advantage it once. This isn't the Steelers are coming here. Steelers are beating them here. So, like, I'm not. I don't have that big bad wolf home vibe, but I don't want to go play in Buffalo and Kansas City in knockout games either next month in the weather, all of that with the kicker problems, with the noise problems. I mean, this team has problems with a snap count in their own building. Like their noise would not play well. Cold will not play well for Lamar. Like I just there's a lot of reasons to not like them going to Buffalo and Kansas City, other than just the fact that they'd be going to Buffalo and Kansas City. So you've told me the whole time, dude, it's Super Bowl or bust, right? They have to win they have to get to the Super Bowl. Maybe they can lose in New Orleans, or that wouldn't smell good either. Unless, especially if it was to the Eagles. But for me, the pathway to winning a Super Bowl right now, I mean, you've heard of doubting Thomases. I'm a doubting Nestor. I don't think they're equipped, given the penalties, the structure, where they are, to go on the road right now, because that's what they're going to have to do. It's not last year anymore. Are they capable? Sure. But these next couple of weeks, I got to see more out of them. I mean, not that they could show me anything against the Giants on Sunday because they couldn't. I just need to see more out of them the next couple of weeks than what I've seen the first 15 weeks. I'm not a believer that they're going to win the Super Bowl, and I wouldn't bet $1 on it right now.
You wouldn't bet $1 on it? Man,
What are their odds?
you wouldn't bet $1 on
What
them winning
are
the
they?
Super
Are they
Bowl?
15 or are they 8? What are they? I don't know what they are.
I don't know. I don't pay attention to that, but not betting $1 on them is insane.
To win the Super Bowl? If I had $1, I wouldn't put it on them. That's all. I put it on somebody else.
Okay. I mean, Well, I mean, if you're asking
I
me
don't
the
know that
rate,
I put it on Buffalo and Detroit, and
well,
we're
and that,
all wound up about that on Sunday.
well, and that,
I don't
but
know
that's
that
part
I
of my
believe.
point here.
Yeah.
I mean, who do you love so much more than the Ravens? I mean,
Well, Kansas City and Buffalo if they're playing at home.
Kansas City barely wins every week.
Okay. Well, they win though.
Okay, but the Ravens are 9-5. I mean,
I remember all those years we thought Tom
I
Brady
just,
was. This was the year they weren't as good, and
I just summarily, I 1000% reject your notion that that you act like they can't win the Super Bowl. Like this isn't 4 years ago when Ronnie Stanley was out for the year.
I
This
think you're
wasn't.
asking them to navigate a hell of a thing to think they're going to go to Buffalo one week and win, and then Kansas City the next week and win.
I'm not.
And that's if they're a 3 seed. That's if they
But
play a home game.
but
And we're
you're
still
speaking in
out on
absolutes as
that.
though you're speaking in absolutes as though you didn't see what happened in 2012 or 2000, right? I mean, this happens all the time. I mean, teams get hot, teams get on a roll. Who's the I mean, okay, I hear you. Kansas City's 13-1. If they weren't the Kansas City Chiefs and you just looked at their profile statistically and you saw that they were 13-1, but you knew nothing about the previous 5 years, you would say that team is absolutely ripe to be knocked out in their first playoff game because of the way they play right now. They barely win every week. And look, that is a skill. I'm not saying that to knock what they have done to this point in time. But when you are relying on, this is what we talk about in baseball. If you're winning one-run games constantly, what's going to happen at some point? Your closer is
Well,
going
what
to blow
happens
one.
is it's 3rd and 7, and you can't figure out Travis Kelce and his girlfriend's up golf clapping for him. And it's happened again and again and again and again. And Lamar, Derrick Henry, John Harbaugh's top 10 going to the Hall of everything. Go beat the Steelers Saturday night. You're a touchdown favorite at home.
But
TJ Watt might not show up.
But you're
George
conflating
Pickens
your
might not show
argument
up.
here. You're now you're changing. Now you're getting off the
No. You're
subject.
I'm trying to give all the hurdles that are going to happen for them. First things first, beat Pittsburgh so you
But
can
my
have a
point is
chance to
that's
have a home game. Then you have a home
I
game.
agree.
And
I
then
agree.
I will be much more of a believer during the bye week when I see who the Ravens are hosting at home that week and where Pittsburgh is going, because Pittsburgh is a team that could go into Buffalo and win because they play defense. So to me, knocking off
Okay.
Buffalo,
I,
what?
I'm not nearly as convinced as you are that Pittsburgh can go into Buffalo and win.
I'm not convinced anybody's going into Buffalo and winning. I'm just
I'm
trying
just
to
saying.
make a scenario where the Ravens don't have to do it this way.
I just think it's hilarious when you say that when the Ravens beat them 35-10 this year.
The Ravens have lost 5 football games this year, and that's the Bill Parcells in me. It is what you are.
I understand
they've
that.
made it very hard on themselves. On paper, they're this and they're that, and they could be this, and they could have a pass rush. And
I
their
agree.
kicker's going to the Hall of Fame, and their coach is a genius, except every time he's not. And like I hear you.
I agree.
They are good enough to win any one game, but putting this scenario together where they've already backed themselves up where they have to win Saturday night, they have to win 4 days later in Houston on the road. They'll hold their water against Cleveland, I guess. I mean, don't tell Jim Schwartz that, but and all of that will happen, and they'll still have to go to Buffalo and Kansas City no matter what. So I'm not bullish on their chances of winning the Super Bowl right now. That's not to say they can't. You and I will have that conversation every single day. But if you're asking me to bet $1 on them or on somebody else, it's going to be somebody else until I see them do something that tells me that they're not a 5-loss team, that's the most penalized team in the world, that doesn't have a secondary that's going to be able to cover against quality teams, that's going to have a pass rush that's going to get on the spot, and they're going to have an offensive line that's not going to put them in 1st and 25 3 times a game on the road in the cold. So
fair enough. I was just pushing back.
That's the body of work. That's
I just think everything you said is noted, and I'm not even saying I disagree with a lot of that, but you just kind of casually slipped in there that you think Pittsburgh can go into Buffalo and win, and I think that's absurd.
I'm trying to find somebody else that can go into Buffalo and maybe get them out of the way,
and
even if you're a 3 seed.
Well, I hear you, but you know what? You know what though, Nestor? Kansas City and Buffalo right now, you know what they're saying about the Ravens? Man, I hope someone can knock them off too.
Oh, sure.
Because and I guess that is my point when I'm looking at this. And look, I hear everything you say, and I agree with you. if we're going to be talking about the scenarios where the Ravens, we're talking about them playing in New Orleans in 7 weeks, whatever it is, 7 weeks, 7, 8, whatever it is, we're talking about them most likely figuring out a way, finding a way to win the division. Pittsburgh stubbing their toe one more time beyond Saturday, and the Ravens having a home playoff game. It's very difficult. Historically speaking, it is extremely difficult to win 3 road games to get to the Super Bowl. We know that. It's happened before, but that's not a high percentage proposition. Whereas if you're a team that doesn't have a first round bye, but you have a home playoff game, as the Ravens have done twice in their history, you can get to a Super Bowl because it is important getting that first round. So I agree with you. I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is all of these teams have warts. I mean, they absolutely do. Buffalo, are they going to stop people? I mean, are they going to be able to stop the Ravens? They couldn't stop them back in week 4. And the last couple of weeks, albeit a great game against Detroit, exciting and fun and all that, they couldn't stop the Lions a whole lot. They couldn't stop the Rams at all the week before. So are they going to stop the Ravens and Lamar Jackson? Well, they didn't back in week 4. Can they do it now? Pittsburgh, do they have enough offensively? I mean, period. I hear you about their defense. It's good defense. Are they going to do enough offensively? I don't know.
Probably not.
Right. And Kansas City, look, I'm the guy that's good. I'm sitting here. I'm going to tell you this right now. If the Ravens are playing Kansas City in the AFC Championship game and Patrick Mahomes is healthy, I'm picking the Chiefs to win. And I made that promise back in week 1. And I said, no matter what, until I see the Ravens do it, I'm not going to believe it. But that said, in terms of what Kansas City actually is as a football team right now, in terms of talent and their health and all of that, they're absolutely vulnerable from a standpoint of, they're not the juggernaut offensively that they were 3 or 4 years ago. And frankly, their defense hasn't been as good as it was last year. Now, 3 weeks from now, 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now, that doesn't mean I'm writing them off, mind you. Let's be clear.
Well, think of all the things Lamar Jackson's going to have to do to earn that right to be there, and including,
Sure.
and I'm wearing sort of a Buffalo Bills colored Raskin Global blue shirt here. You'll feel differently if they're going out to Kansas City as a 4-point underdog for the AFC Championship game. If the Ravens went up on a 12-degree night and somehow won 19-17 over the Bills and vanquished Josh Allen and beat them for a second time this year and did everything that game back in September promised that it could be for them in Buffalo. If they've navigated that and the Ravens have beaten the Chargers at home and the Bills on the road, and they've won now 6 games in a row at that point, right? They will have won 6 games in a row going back to the Giants on Sunday, right? So listen, you will find some way to not like the Chiefs because they barely beat the Texans or barely beat the Steelers the week before or whatever that scenario would be, and limp to a 27-24 victory that somebody missed a kick. Boswell misses a kick to, listen, I'll hear all, because that's what's going to happen. It's always wacky. And the Ravens could be in on that because they're good enough. They're healthy enough. They got the coach, the quarterback, down the line. I've watched them play the last 15 weeks. And if that's a tune-up, great. If this was a dress rehearsal for them going out and beating the Steelers 31-14 and on Saturday night and starting that journey to look like the team we thought they were in the offseason, okay. Or the team they were that night against the Bills. Let's just say that. Because that's sort of a high watermark. Where last year, you'd probably say their high watermark was Christmas night beating the snot out of the 49ers on the road, right? Like, that night, you're like, holy shit, hey, my God.
Or the Dolphins the following week.
This team's going to host a championship game. And look out, Patrick Mahomes is in. And then Taylor Swift showed up, and they ran the ball 3 times. And John Harbaugh is going to make his case to go to the Hall of Fame on efforts like that. Like, no bueno. John Harbaugh's lost too many big games.
Lamar didn't play like the MVP either. I mean, it wasn't just the running game. We don't need. We've talked about that.
Well, they've lost a lot of playoff games around here lately.
Hey,
Marlon Humphrey, Ronnie Stanley,
but you know
all
what?
of them. They lost a lot of playoff games around
Buffalo's
here
lost a lot of playoff games too.
Sure.
I mean, look, we all know Kansas City's not going to win the Super Bowl every year moving forward, right? They are going to lose at some point.
It's a hell of a lot easier when you take the first week of January off and you get to eat at home and have barbecue.
Sure. That
and it's a whole lot easier when you earn that through slapping around and barely winning every week. Every week. They win every week.
I understand, but is that going to continue? Is my point.
Okay. Winners win.
I just think it's funny, but you're acting like it's over already.
It's far from over. This is why I'm
especially considering they're the team that.
Dude, I'm getting another cup of Zeke's coffee right now, and I'm getting ready for Saturday night. Relax. We'll do plenty more.
No,
the Orioles might actually sign somebody. You want to fight? We'll do an Orioles segment.
Again, my overall point is all of these teams have flaws. So from that standpoint,
no question.
Will
these flaws be worked out by Saturday night for the Ravens in the biggest game of the year? Here we go, right? This is fun.
Will Pittsburgh have TJ Watt and George Pickens? Because if they don't have those guys, I feel even better about picking the Ravens then. But they got to go do it. I'm with you. If they don't do it, then yeah, we're going to be talking about, well, they're going to be the 5 or the 6 seed, and we'll see.
Maybe straight uphill from there.
Yeah, no question. They'll definitely have to earn it then if they're playing in the AFC title game. So
Luke Jones, future author of Purple Rain 3, written with John Harbaugh, How I Did It. I am Nestor. He is Luke. It's all sponsored by our friends at Jiffy Lube Multi-Care, presenting Luke back and forth from Owings Mills. We're going to be doing the Maryland Crab Cake Tour with our friends from the Maryland Lottery on Tuesday. We're going to be at Amici's. They don't even have a crab cake, but I'm doing the Crab Cake Tour. Wednesday, we're going to be at Costas in Dundalk. That's just over my shoulder. Come on out. See some friends, have a cup of cheer. It's the holidays. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and all that good stuff, and happy Festivus for the rest of us. We're BaltimorePositive.com. Stay with us.